Austin, and welcome back to Spooky Boy and the Spirit Sisters, a paranormal podcast for the strange and unusual.
By the strange and unusual.
Today, in episode 10, we talk about Missing 411 and the strangeness of it all. Before that, Lauren hit us with the ditty.
We would just like to take a moment to thank all of you for your support, for sharing your stories and your experiences with us. Our goals with this podcast is to create a safe place to start opening up and having these discussions. We are not experts. We are learning and exploring these topics with you together. We are being vulnerable and sharing our experiences with you because we want to take this journey together with you. We want to seek the truth together with you. We love hearing from you, and if we are to continue building this community, we need your help. So please, share us, share with us, and that way we can share more with you. Like, follow, subscribe, and again, share. You can visit our website, listen to us on one of your favorite apps. We are currently on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Buzzsprout, YouTube with closed captioning, among other apps. Stay up to date with us by following us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Even by convincing one friend, just one, to listen to us, whether it's someone who likes this stuff, who would benefit from this community. It is a great way to open up the conversation. So again, share us, share with us, so we can then share more with you. When we were sitting down to plan what we were going to discuss in episode 10, Austin was really adamant almost. He's like, I really want to discuss the missing 411 cases. Now, Austin and I kind of learned a little bit about it from another podcast that we listened to, but just exploring the topic on our own, like Austin's been really, really intrigued by it.
So where was my first exposure to Missing 411? It was through a podcast called Mysterious Universe, and they were covering the work of David Paulides, who was a former police detective back in like California, like San Francisco and San Jose. His career in law enforcement was like 20 years deep, and his first book he actually ever wrote about was about Bigfoot. So when he was writing his second Bigfoot book, he was actually looking into like national parks and things like that. Well, while he was doing his investigation and everything like that, he actually had a state park ranger approach him and bring to his attention about all these missing person cases that when him and a couple of other like state park rangers were trying to get information about said cases of these missing people, like they were hitting like basically a wall. The national, like, what is it called? Like the national, like forest people, like, I don't know what's their name? Like, I'm drawing a blank here.
Instead of like the NSA, it's the NFA, the National Forest Association.
Yeah.
It totally could be, and I had no idea.
Basically the federal park people, right?
Yeah.
Like, the people who oversee all the different state parks, and they were just saying, no, you don't get this information and things like that. Like they were literally stonewalling their own people trying to get more information about, you know, all these people actually disappearing. So that sparked his interest. And so he actually started a really long, like, investigation looking at all these different missing cases. And he was starting to see like commonalities, right? So like one would be people who go missing usually do so in national parks around large bodies of water or near boulder fields. That's like the first one. The second one is people from both ends of intellectual spectrum go missing. But one of the big things that he noticed was there was a lot of people who usually have some sort of disability that would go missing. There's a lot of cases where there's people that are partially deaf. So Amanda and I, we're screwed. We're never going into the forest.
Crap.
We'll be bye-bye. And then, same thing with physical spectrum. It doesn't matter. You could have super abled athletic hunters to people with bum legs, right? And then he's also noticed there's a lot of children that will go missing, but most of the children usually do get found, but they never have any recollection of the missing time. Like they'll remember like the moment up to where essentially they go missing, and then they'll remember basically when almost they're woken up out of some sort of trance and brought back to reality in a weird way.
Because the aliens wiped the memory.
I don't think it's aliens. And then, if the missing individual, like adult-wise or child, is found deceased, the cause of death is almost never determined. Like they have really never found what basically killed the person. You got another one that the missing are found in areas that seem almost impossible for the person to have reached by themselves without any like equipment or gear. And that's a very common theme where you'll have, like there's a case of like a child being found 2,000 feet above where he went missing originally, right? There's no way a 2-year-old child is going to traverse something that almost a full grown-ass adult can barely even climb.
Well, could it be something that either, not so much that it climbed, but like it could have fallen to that point? Or maybe it's something like, think about it. Like if you
they went on a helicopter ride, or an eagle picked up the child and was like,
maybe the child
bye-bye.
was wandering, and you know
fell
how
off and landed,
it could have the child could have been wandering, and if it's like a slope, it could have gone up and up and up and up and up and up, and then it got to a point that
far away.
No,
right?
so this is, I'm not talking like they were already at the top of the peak and rolled down. This is like where they were at the base, and they're found further up, where not only was already searched.
Have any of you ever been around kids? Like, babies do the weirdest shit.
I don't think they're defying physics here. No, I mean, I don't have a kid, but I swear to God, if one was like Spider-Man, I would train it.
Them terrible twos, man.
But, and then another big commonality is that the missing are found in areas that have been searched over and over again, hundreds of hours gone into these same spots. And then, you're talking months, years down the road, some random hikers go back and there's the body, or there's some sort of evidence of, like clothing or something that, just happens to be there now when it wasn't. There's a lot of cases involving people who go missing for a week, but only died a day or two prior to being found, which you could say is exposure, could be hunger, could be thirst, right? Depending on your body type and things like that. Like if they don't have access to clean water, like you're going to die within like a week. It's just, that's science. So that one, I'm like, that seems like you're cherry picking a little bit here. You're trying to find something. Another one that I sort of don't really agree with, they're like, shoes tend to go missing. Well, if the person's missing, the shoes are missing. Like you're like, unless it's a child who didn't tie their shoes, like I could see if, you're being dragged by an animal up like a mountain or through the wilderness and you didn't tie your shoes, sure, like a boot or something should fall off. But when you're talking about full grown-ass adults that are, especially some of them are hunters, they're tying their stuff, so you're not going to find a boot just randomly displaced somewhere. Now, one thing that really is interesting is when they bring in, like, search and rescue dogs, like they'll bring in bloodhounds or cadaver dogs and stuff like that, and they always they're always able to, like, track them up to the spot where they go missing. But that's it. Like then the trail's dead cold, and you can, it could be not near a body of water or anything like that where these people have gone missing, but the dogs will just sit down and be like, we got nothing. There's no tracks. left by these people. Like you'll have expert trackers, but they'll see like the footprints leading up to where they disappeared. But after that, it's done. There's nothing there. And then, another thing that David will not do, when he looks into these cases, he won't actually investigate any case of someone who's had a mental illness of any kind. Because, you're talking about depression and history of anxiety and things like that. You could chalk it up either A, they wanted to go missing, or they planned their own death, like on a hunting trip, or they just were like, yeah, this seems peaceful, I'll go here, right? But then that story still goes into, well, if it was a suicide, then where's the body? And you could say, oh, yeah, well, an animal came, like a bear, or cougar, or mountain lion, whatever, came, grabbed the body, dragged it off. But there would still be some sort of, like, tracks from the animal or dragging of a body or something like that. So I don't know. It's really freaking interesting. And we have a few cases that we're going to talk about and share with you guys. Basically want to hear your theories in the comments and stuff like that. We're going to bring our own theories in here. And yeah, let's just jump into it. Who wants to jump into the first case here?
Well, before we go into the cases, I want to go back to the shoe thing.
Shoe thing?
So, because I remember Austin and I watched a documentary, or did we watch 2 documentaries?
I've watched 2. I know we for sure watched one maybe last year, which is free on YouTube, which is just called Missing 411. And then if you have Amazon Prime and you are a Prime member, the second movie that got released last year in 2019, that one's called Missing 411, The Hunted. So. Okay.
Because we've also watched YouTube videos on it as well.
Yeah.
And about the shoes, it's not so much that their shoes are missing. It's always that they're found and there's always one shoe missing. Always.
Not necessarily, because there is a case where like a 3-year-old kid went missing and stuff like that. And later, I think it was like 3 years later, they found his body, right? Well, what was left, and his shoes were perfect.
Yeah.
Like if they were brand new store-bought shoes that were like really weird.
Yeah, there's always something about the shoes though. Like it's not just, oh, well, the person's missing. Oh, well, all of a sudden their shoes are missing. There's always something weird about the shoes. Like one's either like perfectly missing, or you find them and they're pristine, like in pristine condition. Like, because with that one too,
like my personality.
Yeah. I think now there's a lot of, so it's for me personally, when we were looking at the cases and I was looking at some of the stories of the different things, it's so hard for me to keep the cases like aligned or separated, because there's so many cases that are so similar
that's
hard.
That as well.
It's hard for me to be able to be like, well, that's this person or that's that person.
Yeah, it's hard to discern them, especially, and that's where the like whole commonality is.
Yeah.
And now there's the whole like the skeptic thing is, and this isn't me being like, oh, I thought of this. This is like, if you do research on it, you'll find examples of people who truly 100% believe something weird's happening, and then you'll have other people that are just like, dude, he's just cherry picking cases and he's leaving out vital information, which he's not. I mean, he's got 20 years in being basically a law enforcement officer. And even when you read his books or you watch the documentaries, he never gives a like, oh, this is what it is, or this is what I think it is. He just lays facts out.
Plus the dude's covered over 1,400 cases.
Yeah.
Like, a lot.
So,
that is a lot.
In a way, I almost respect him more for being like, I'm not going to tell you what I think it is or what it is.
Yeah.
I'm going to lay out all the facts for you, and you can decide for yourself what you want to think it is. And
that's why
I respect him more for that. Because
that's exactly what I was saying. Like, I very much. That's why I don't think he's just like trying to just cherry pick whatever he wants. Like, he really is looking at cases that just really weirdly correspond with one another. And he's dated it back. He's like, I'm sure it even goes further back, but like some of the earliest documentation is like the late 1930s going forward, and it's still happening to this day.
I remember that's the one story from back then, how it was a daughter, and then it's always camping too. Like they're always out in the forest.
Told you I don't like camping.
This
Another reason to add
why
I don't like camping.
They were going on just like a nice hike, and there was the teenage daughter, I think it was, or maybe she was in her early 20s, and she was just like mere feet ahead of the group, and she turned on a path, like maybe just disappeared behind a tree. Well, when the group finally caught up and was at a point where they could easily be able to see her down the road, she was gone. Like, she was just gone. Like, almost like she was just like, poof, nothing there.
Yeah, like, wasn't it that one where it was like in the 60s or something?
That was way
earlier. It was earlier than that? But yeah, like basically from news articles and in police reports and stuff, like, everyone was like, dude, maybe she was like 25 yards ahead of us, and she just turned left or right and behind a tree, and that was it. There was nothing.
But I want to go back to the shoe thing, because with that one, I remember that case because they found the little boy's shoes nicely, like they found them brand new, just nice, just kind of like put one next to the other. But the only thing they were able to find left over from that little boy was like, I don't know if it was a skull cap or a piece of his skull, like, so if his body got to the point where they're finding a part of his skull, those shoes would not be as pristine.
No.
Like, and even if an animal had gotten to him, like, the shoes would not be like
there should
that.
have been, like, dirt and mud, and they should have been torn apart.
Yeah. And
yeah, that case is highlighted in the first documentary. It was just, like, hearing the father, like, describe his, like, he still blames himself to this day, like just sending his son out there.
Mm-hmm.
And he still has like his son's clothing of article that they found next to his like skull cap. I mean, the father still has his son's skull cap.
It's got to be
like,
hard too, because there's no closure for these families.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Like for the ones that they're still missing, there's no closure. There's no, oh, okay, this happened. There's always that hope too, like, well, maybe they survived, maybe they did, and that's what's really, really hard about these cases too, because it's like, imagine what the families are going through with all this.
Yeah, I think there was like 10,000 man hours spent searching for that little boy, and they never found anything. And then it was 3 years later, where they already searched once again hundreds of times, over and over and over. There he is. And like a lot of hunters that helped with the investigation and searching for him, they think maybe a mountain lion got him, but even like you see, like he's got like his son's jacket from that day, like the shirt, little hoodie shirt that he was just wearing, and there's no like claw marks in it, there's no like bite marks or anything like that, there's no blood of any sort, even on the skull cap there's not any blood. In which you guess, like, yeah, if this kid was eaten by an animal and digested and things like that, most of that blood and all that kind of stuff would be, dissolved away, like all of that. So that's one theory of way, like you could say, oh, hey. Another theory was like an eagle swooped down and picked up the kid, because like an eagle, believe it or not, can literally pick up 30 pounds.
And that's why I was like, maybe it's possible that he climbed up there, that maybe he was somehow dropped at that point.
Yeah, but I know like the father clearly remembers like the details of that day. Like, how would you not, like, and he's like, my son hated tying his shoes. He never tied his shoes. So he's like, I stopped fussing with him about it. I figured I'd try when he got older, right? So like we would just slip his shoes on, and he's like, so if he was dragged by an animal, his shoes would come off. Also, if he was dragged by an animal or anything, there would be dirt, and then the weather exposure for 3 years would have destroyed the shoes. Like you're talking snow, rain, heat, all of that. Those shoes still looked like brand new and out of a box.
Also, with that case too, that what really bugged me about it was, okay, maybe we should start from the beginning with that case. And so the particular case we were talking about, the little boy's name was Jared, and Jared was 3 years old. And his family were on a Christian singles trip. And the father now, is very kind of like familiar with the area, and he had like friends there. And basically what happened that day was the friends wanted to go on a hike, and the father's like, yeah, okay, you know, the daughter can go, that's fine. And the little boy was like, oh, well, if, you know, my sister can go, I want to go on the hike too. The father wasn't going to go on the hike. He was staying back to like set something up, or he was sticking behind. And the group that they were with wanted to go to like this fish hatchery that was like up the road a bit of ways. So the father was kind of like hesitant at first, but he was like, okay, you know, just you can go ahead, go. But he did give them instructions not to go to a specific spot. You know, it's getting dark. Don't go that far, you know, just go to these areas and then, you know, turn around and come back. Well, he let the little boy go with the group that was going to be there. And while the group was out hiking, at some point, again, it was just to the point where the little boy got a little ahead. It wasn't like tremendous, like leaps and bounds ahead of the group from hiking. It was just a little bit ahead of the group. Well, when they tried to catch up with the little boy, they never could. Like, they never were able to. So when they finally returned back after searching and searching and searching, they were like, we can't find Jared. We thought maybe he backtracked and came here. A 3-year-old boy, keep in mind, 3 years old. The last people to have seen Jared alive, and this pisses me off to no belief. So apparently a couple of fishermen were sitting on the edge of like the water, and they claimed that they saw Jared come out of the woods, not accompanied by anybody else. And Jared asked them, like, oh, are there bears in the water? Like, are there bears around here? And the fishermen, not paying any mind, they were like, oh, well, we just figured that, you know, the group will catch up with him eventually. Like, a 3-year-old.
Wow.
Yeah. And they were like, oh, no, maybe you should go back. Didn't bother to, like, have the kid there. Didn't bother to, like, hold on to him just to, like, see where his adults were. Like, 3 years old. And they just let him wander off. Like,
yeah, see, and this is where, like, I feel like one of the common things is, like, when you start looking into these cases, especially with, like, children, there's always basically adults not being good. Like,
yeah.
they're
And-
negligent to watching somebody so young. Like, he should never have been, like, it doesn't matter, like, oh, he's 10 feet in front of us. He is a 3-year-old child that would see a freaking shiny rock on the road and stop and play with it.
Yeah.
He's not cognitively there to be understanding, oh, a big kitty,
doesn't
which
know
is a mountain
better.
lion,
Right.
is not something you want to approach.
He doesn't know
Like,
better.
exactly.
He's 3.
And
it's nothing on his fault. It's on the fault of the adults
two, no
who
one
are
wants
left
to
in
sit
charge
here
to
and
take
go,
care of them.
oh, well, that won't happen to me. That'll happen to other people. Like,
It's that false
it's-
confidence.
Yeah.
It's false confidence.
So, but also, it should have been on the adults to make sure that he was with them at all times, that he
Well, yeah,
didn't
that's
go
what I
ahead.
was saying, like-
And two, those 2 fishermen, like, who were just like, oh, that's fine, he'll be okay. Like, no.
Yeah, if I saw a 3-year-old with no adult, like, my first instinct is to grab them and be like, hey, where are your parents? Let's go find them.
buddy. Let's go
Right,
find.
like I would do that if I saw like a little kid wandering around in a grocery store.
Yeah.
Much less in like a national park or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of bad people out there. There's a lot of strange people. So, like, one thing, I hate to say it, but maybe he wasn't taken by an animal. Maybe one of the fishermen, or both of them. He wandered off. They noticed the group wasn't there. They had bad tendencies running through their brain,
It's
and
a
they took him.
possibility. Like,
You know, it would hence be the reason why, like, he just turns a corner and he's not there. And it gives him enough time to know that, like, oh, hey, here's this little kid. He's trusting enough because he sees an adult. He doesn't know better. Adults left him. We're going to take him, and we're going to do whatever we want, kind of thing.
Did these fishermen, did they come forward with this information right away, or was it
So it took a bit, because they did. They called the national, whoever they call, and then they did a wide search, and I think once it hit the news, hey, this little boy went missing, then they came forward. They alerted the authorities. So that's why I'm if you're going to do that to a child, if we went with the theory, maybe it was the fisherman, they're not going to be hey, yeah, we saw that kid. It was more so hey, we saw him, but we didn't realize that he never made it with his other group.
Yeah, and I said, I'm not saying those fishermen were guilty of anything. I'm just saying it's a thought, because especially when I look at the details of this case, right? He just disappears out of nowhere. 3 years later, his stuff's discovered, and his clothing had been sort of picked away from birds and rodents for nesting and stuff, but his shoes are crisp and clean. And it's 3 years later in an area that they already searched over and over and over again.
Keep in mind, too, this was also in 1999. So,
it's not that. They had DNA testing. They had some
stuff, but they don't have anywhere near what they have nowadays.
Yeah, but there's even cases today where you got all the tech that we have, thermal imaging that can zoom in from almost a mile out and see the detail of it. But I'm just saying for this case
in particular. So,
I get what you're saying. My theory on this case is honestly that either someone in the group or some other person on this trail or these fishermen took the young boy, kidnapped him, did what they wanted to do, basically, killed him, and then later on disposed of the evidence when everything was sort of spotlights were sort of off the thing at that point, because it's 3 years down the road, and then they put his stuff out there kind of thing. I'm thinking it's some sort of serial killer or sadistic psychopath. I don't think that a mountain lion got him, because there would be blood all over his clothes. There would have been marks, or there would have been something. I don't, the way his shoes were so damn clean. The dad in the documentary pulls them out. He hasn't touched them. They're still in the evidence bag of how they found them. And they are clean, brand new out of a box kind of clean. If that was even taken by an animal or, out even in the elements, they'd be destroyed at this point.
Yeah.
So to me, it seems like it was almost like a trophy thing or
calling card,
something, whatever, right? My theory is honestly that a person took him, and it's heartbreaking. But I don't think he slipped in some wormhole. I don't think
aliens
or some dimensional rifts or any military or anything like that. I very much think there was someone took him. I don't know. That's my theory. What are your guys' thoughts?
I'm with Austin on this one.
Yeah, I think because of the shoes and everything.
Yeah.
That's just so
I watched
weird.
too many crime shows, and it's it's literally...
I am Detective Amanda.
Once again, my name's Amanda.
I'm a sleuth.
And I know more than you.
And in every show, there's always been an episode that is like this case. And it could be based off of that case. But every single time, it's either something of the clothing, could be shoes, it could be a hat, it could be something, and it's just perfect. And it just so happened to be a serial killer. So it makes the most sense.
Just for me, just the way of looking at it, because hunters, and we'll say that usually when a mountain lion goes and attacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
He leaps at the gut. That's usually where a mountain lion attacks. Claws, teeth, they rip into the gut, or they bite
it has
the shoulder
the most meat.
Or the neck and stuff like that to sort of disable their prey and drag them off. There would be blood. There would be something.
Yeah.
And there's nothing. Because I said, they found his clothes again, and his shirt for as old as it was, and if it was out in the elements, was still in really pretty good condition. I mean, it was tattered, it was stained, it was dirty, like ripped up a bit, but the whole like chest and stomach area of it perfectly intact, nothing ripped up or anything there.
Did they find all of the clothes on the boy, or
it wasn't on the boy? It was just next to his skull cap, like half his skull cap, like so.
Like literally
like the part of half your
frontal
forehead.
Lobe. Yeah, like the frontal.
Like basically like in a way of like how Native Americans would scalp.
Because I was thinking, I was like, you know, a lot of these like serial killers and shit, like they will take an article of clothing and
as a trophy.
Yeah. But
I mean, all we saw from at least from what was shown and what was recorded from evidence was the skull cap, his like hoodie, his like sweater, his pants, which were turned inside out, so almost like if a little kid pulled them off in a way, or someone ripped them off of him kind of thing, and then his shoes. That's it. Like, there was nothing else past that. So that's why I very much think it's, you know, and it could have been where, like, they killed the kid, you know, way earlier or around that time that when he went missing, and then just threw his body somewhere that wasn't even near any of the searching, and then the animal, you know, sees, oh, it's, you know, vultures, anything like that. It's like, oh, it's food. Like, I'm going to go eat this. And then later on, 3 years down the road, you know, disposed or dragged part of that stuff there. But
there's still the matter of the shoes.
Yeah, the shoes and stuff like that. So I very much think that, like I said, he was unfortunately, like, and it's heartbreaking, he was killed by somebody, and then later in their years, they were like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to put this stuff here.
Sorry, how long was it before they found all of that stuff?
I think it was like 3 years.
Yeah.
I think it was 3 years later.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, and then, like I said, there was hundreds and hundreds of people walking that entire area.
They
like,
had K9 units out.
Yeah,
they had
they had helicopters doing flybys.
His family did not stop looking for him. Like, it was one after another. And then when they're like, oh, well, we can't do the search now, then they would have, like, other people come and search themselves in all the areas. Like, they scaled things over and over and over and over again. So there was never, like, a lull in things. And they just did an interview with his father last year, and he still has everything. Like, he still has the skull cap. He still has the articles of clothing, because he's like, you know, I want the police to do their job. I want to figure out what happened with everything, because there's still so many unanswered things. And even from the stuff that they have, it's, for some reason, just not enough to get an actual answer on what has happened. So,
yeah,
that's why I couldn't look into kid cases for this.
Well, Amanda, what is your case?
So I did the Glenn and Bessie Hyde case, and when I was reading this one's interesting, based on, like, stuff that happened afterwards. So Glenn and Bessie disappeared on November 18th, 1928. When they were boating downriver in kind of like the Grand Canyon area. And at this time, the Grand Canyon wasn't doing these types of tours like they do now. So it's basically you have to have some experience. And Glenn was the one who had experience, but Bessie didn't. So Bessie was a little bit nervous about it. A lot of people were saying that she didn't want to go at all, but he was forcing her. And this was actually their honeymoon trip, because they had just gotten married.
What a dick.
How old was she?
She was, I believe, 22 when this happened, and she had already been married previous to this. So she...
Oh, scandalous.
Well, yeah, in the 20s, that kind of is.
Yeah. At one point, they did stop and get supplies, and they put everything back into their boat. They actually met a photographer on the route, and they wanted to get like their picture taken and all that kind of stuff because they were on their honeymoon and they wanted to like document all of that. And a lot of people think that he actually had something to do with their death.
The photographer?
Yeah. So it said that at mile 225 they were to have built a camp. Now when they were searching for them, there was nothing there, like at all. So when they found their boat, it was all of their shit was in there still. Like, but no Bessie or Glenn. Like, it was upright. It was just floating, and then it got stuck on like a boulder or something like that.
Okay, so that kicks one theory out. I figured, maybe you said that Glenn, right, made the raft.
Yeah.
So I figured, it just got wrecked under the rapids pressure and just tore apart, and then they went under.
Yeah, and it's funny because Glenn apparently fell in the water. He fell out of the boat at some point, but it didn't stop him. Like, he got back in, and they kept going. And their goal was, I believe, a 1.5 month trip that they had planned. But when they went missing, or when they had last been heard from the time that they technically closed the case, it had been 41 days. So they were way past that 1.5 months of their trip. So, and no one had heard from them. Not a single person. And it's a weird case. Like,
well, I mean, that's not too odd. Like, no one hearing from them for so long. I mean, they were planning.
Back then.
Yeah, exactly. So you said, you said 1928, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you could just walk to your local gas station and just be like, I need to make a phone call here.
Yeah, and when I go back to the photographers real quick, he had warned them of the dangerous waters or the rapids ahead, and Glenn literally laughed in his face. He was like, I don't care. But Bessie she was so scared. Like, she looked like she wanted to leave and all of that. So one theory that people are saying is that Bessie actually killed Glenn because she didn't want to go forward with this trip. And she just wanted to leave. And then another theory is that Glenn killed Bessie because she didn't want to do this, but he did because he also wanted to do it he wanted to break a record of some sorts. And then if they broke that record, Bessie would be the first woman to break that record and be like in that, like,
basically they would have made history.
Yeah, made history back then.
But then why would he kill her?
Right. And when I say this case is weird, I'll tell you why. So there was this woman that her name was Georgie Clark. This was years later. And she was on a commercial. Yeah, no. Okay, yeah. Georgie Clark. Her real name was Bessie. And on her birth certificate, she also, it had the same name as the original, woman who went missing. And she also had their marriage license and a pistol in the same drawer. Now, it was later found out that they aren't the same people.
Bullshit. They do DNA testing? Because I guarantee she was dead way before DNA testing came into play.
I don't know, but there was also another thing, and this is where...
Why would you...
Right, no, I know.
Your name is the same. Also, you have the marriage certificate of said couple that went missing. Straight up, it's the same person.
Yeah.
Like, she killed her husband, planned her, like you said, wanted to escape. So she's like, oh, well, I can't go back because I'm so afraid that the law will question me and I'll get charged and arrested for his murder, right? So I'm just going to disappear, change my name, start a whole new life. Straight up. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it.
Better than being, thrice divorced, so
Right.
or twice divorced. So
Well, and then there was another woman in 1971. So this was like 50 years later. She was on a commercial boat trip, and she went over the intercom and literally said that she was Bessie Hyde.
What was her age?
It just says she's an elderly woman. Her name was Liz Cutler, and when someone asked her what she did with Glenn, she literally just stared at them in the face with like no hesitation, said, "I killed him."
See? Told you.
And
Straight up.
she said that they fought and that she stabbed him and she didn't know what to do. But apparently she was a college professor that just liked to play mind games, so it wasn't the same person.
A college professor is doing
Yeah.
that? Wow.
I could see it.
Yeah, a college
it's just
professor
like the
from
people-
Ohio.
Like, you've got cases where people, I don't understand the psychology of it, but, if there's a murder that happens or there's a serial murder that happens, people who go to the police going, I did it, I'm the person who's behind it.
Yeah.
But really, they weren't. They didn't have anything to do with it. They
Right.
just...
Is it just to, like, get a rise out of people? Is
Probably.
Yeah,
probably,
most likely.
It's also probably for, like, the fame of things, like... Wanting to
Yeah.
be notorious is, like, a thing. Is, like, a kink.
Yeah, and
That's
then
messed up.
yeah.
Regardless if it's that person or not, I'm more sticking with my same theory that that first person, like you said, that you brought up, who was like
Yeah.
an actress or whoever she was,
Yeah.
there's no reason why you would. Like, one thing is like, okay, you could share the same name. Like, you have people today that aren't even related by blood, but they have the same last name, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that you have the marriage certificate in
Yeah,
your
and like
drawer.
one of the things that was said about that is that it was a souvenir. How the fuck is
How
that
do
a
you get
souvenir?
that?
How did you get that?
Yeah.
I want to know.
Right.
How did you
Her
get that?
first husband.
Dead.
Yeah, right.
They just got divorced.
And he's
Divorced by
alive.
death.
Did they ever question him about,
No.
like...
Not
do
They
you-
got divorced, and he hopped a plane, and he went somewhere far away.
Yep.
yeah.
Like-
Mhm.
Yeah, they got divorced and then
The afterlife.
Glenn and Bessie got married the day after her divorce was final.
Told ya.
Call
Scandalous.
foul play.
Hussy. Hussy.
Oh, and then later on, they found like skeletal remains of a young man found in the canyon rim, but they thought it was Glenn, but it wasn't. It ended up being a like cadaver type.
New theory. What if this is going completely out of like left field here, but
Lay it
say-
on us.
Say she actually killed the guy who was like, say she actually killed Glenn way before this stupid camping trip, okay? And she was actually having an affair with another guy,
The photographer.
probably, and then is like, we're gonna stage this whole thing because I'm already notorious. I've been divorced once. I don't want to get divorced again. So I kill the husband. I go missing. I start a whole new life. And
So my
that's
theory.
it.
So
Like,
you're sticking with my theory.
so, well, no, because it's different. Because I think she would have killed Glenn beforehand, and then to be brought on this whole like trip, quote air quotes trip, and then for like the boat to be flipped, for all of their stuff to be gone, like, and
But
then
it
for them
wasn't.
to find a cadaver.
Well, no, the boat wasn't flipped. It got wedged in between some stuff as
All
it was
their
floating
stuff
down,
was
and
still
all that
tied in
stuff was
it.
completely tied in there.
Okay, well that's poor planning on her part.
No. That's actually really ingenious because like it makes it seem like I guarantee what the investigation pretty much came up with at the end of it when they couldn't find them. They were like, well, all their stuff's tied here. They have this shoddy ass glued together like raft that this dude made. He was too cocky for his own good. He brought someone on who didn't even have experience, so she probably got yeeted off the boat during the rapids. So she got flung out, and they're just like, oh, they drowned, right? And then we can't like find the bodies because we don't have the capabilities of really like dragging
Well, yeah,
a
and
river like this,
it's
right?
the Colorado River. Like,
Yeah.
it's that river. It's covered in rapids, and it's almost damn near impossible with how fast it goes.
So basically,
Yeah.
what you're saying is, if I ever wanted to kill Austin, I just have to turn him into a missing 411 case, and I'd get away with it too.
You heard it here.
Yeah.
You heard it
We
here.
have witnesses now.
I'd get away with it too, as long as you mangy kids and your cat keep your mouth shut.
Whoa.
Hey, don't bring little Bean into this.
yeah.
But no, I would say like that was actually, if she was that one person, which I'm very much believing that she is. Just like, why would you have the marriage certificate?
Yeah, that's where I
That doesn't even
found
make
It
sense.
was extremely odd altogether. I mean, that body that they found was actually in the photographer's, like, on his property. So that's why they thought initially that it was Glenn and that the photographer had something to do about it.
I'm telling you, she was having an affair with the photographer.
But it wasn't Glenn that they found.
I don't care. Maybe the
Who was
photographer
it?
had a
It
fancy.
was a
Photographers are pretty
unidentified
irresistible.
suicide victim that they found. Like a cadaver type of, like, that you would donate.
Well, okay, but a cadaver was alive at one point, and there's a reason they're there's a reason they're a cadaver. There's a reason they're a cadaver.
Yeah.
So, was it really a cadaver, or was it actually just a body that they were like, oh yeah, cadaver from the research
Well,
facility?
she said it was suicide.
Yeah, it was a suicide, and it was actually documented that it was a donation to, like, a
I want to see
scientific...
these donations, and why? Why would there be a cadaver?
I don't know.
Unless he forged the papers, forged everything, and it's all just one big cover-up.
It
No, 'cause,
could
like,
be,
back then,
but...
because like if he was a photographer, he also could have been not just taking pictures as like a journalist or naturist or anything like that. He's probably trying to take work anywhere he could fucking get it, right? So he would probably go to the morgue and things like that. Now
And
I
take
don't,
the
I
bodies
don't know.
home with
I mean,
him?
hey man, necrophiliac, all right? He was into it, maybe. Who knows? I don't know why there would be a corpse buried on his property, other than that it was a fake suicide, you know, that assisted suicide.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
regardless, weird.
Assisted against its will suicide?
But that's
like-
so the Glenn and Bessie thing though. That's a missing 411 case.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
We just solved it.
What about
A
their
sleuth
shoes?
over here. Yeah.
There was nothing about shoes?
No.
Shoes.
No. They literally came up with nothing, and it ended up just staying cold. So, because they could never figure out exactly what happened.
Well, clearly, I just told you. It's all one big elaborate cover-up.
Well, regardless, everyone that was a part of this case is dead now. So,
So if Bessie didn't die during that trip, she's dead now.
yeah. Well, the woman that
Time gets us all.
we were talking about that is most likely Bessie.
Alive?
No, she's dead.
Oh, okay.
No.
I was like, I want to
Damn.
interview her.
Plot twist.
So
Next interview.
Bessie, if you're listening to our podcast and you want to share your side.
Yeah.
In the next episode, we pull out the spirit board and we contact.
Bessie, is that you?
Oh, God.
Yes, I killed Glenn. It was me.
Lauren
Do
was
it.
right.
You fucking sleuths.
What
Would have got away and wait.
We did too if it weren't for your meddling kids.
And your damn Ouija board. All right, Cassidy, what you got?
what's
Yeah.
your story?
Well,
What's my story? Well,
Well, let me tell you. It all starts.
1992. Well, the one that I thought was really interesting was about this young boy. His name's Dennis. And this was in 1969. And it was Father's Day weekend. So he was out with his brother, his dad, and his grandpa. And they were over in the Smoky Mountain National Park. And basically, while they were camping out there, this man approached his father and was like, hey, I have some kids out here too, would you like to all of them just play together? And the dad was like, yeah, sure. So they all kind of, all the kids got together and they played this big game of hide and seek. And basically, you're a little kid and you're like, okay, I'm going to hide behind this tree and just jump out and spook my family, whatever. So during the whole game, the father was keeping an eye on Dennis, and he saw him at one point behind this giant tree. So one by one, all these kids were jumping up and going boo and surprising their family. And Dennis never jumped out from behind that tree. And they were unable to find him. So his father was frantic and was searching far and wide over towards the Appalachian Trail at this point. And because it was relatively nearby to where they were. And there was no luck. So the park rangers ended up getting involved in the search, and the FBI eventually, outside of a ton of other local volunteers. There was 1,400 people involved in this search, and about 13,420 total man hours spent amongst all the searchers, and that doesn't even include the 200 hours that were spent by helicopters searching the area. So it was a huge search for this kid, and it was criticized a lot because there was a lot of people involved in this search. So obviously, the more people you have, the more chances you have of footprints and stuff. Ended up getting contaminated. Yeah, it was muddy because there was a heavy rain, so that's hiding tracks and making things harder to identify. So. And it was 3 days into this search that they were able to find his shoe and his sock. And the tracks that they ended up finding, they thought were originally from this Boy Scout who was helping out in the search. But they realized that it was actually Dennis's trail because the track looked like it was only it was someone walking that only had one shoe. So what's interesting, though, is that there was another family that was staying out there at the same time, the Key family. And so they were there that same weekend, and they reported that they asked park rangers to see where the bears and stuff were, and they asked them where to go to see these bears. And during this whole thing, they heard this loud scream. And
Bear got him.
And one of the children ended up pointing to something at the top of the hill, thinking it was a bear. But the father that was with them saw it and said, no, I don't think that's a bear at all. It looks like a wild, hairy mountain man.
Oh, come on. You're not going to hit me with Bigfoot here, abducted a child.
I'm not saying it's Bigfoot.
But you're not saying it's not.
I am. It's Bigfoot.
But this wild hairy man that they saw looked like it was carrying something over its shoulder that was bright red. And Dennis was wearing a bright red shirt the day of his disappearance.
Okay, so what year was this again?
1969.
Okay, they had ghillie suits, camouflage stuff that you would hide in the woods, especially if you're hunting.
But hairy?
Well, if you're not really familiar with a ghillie suit,
Yeah, and
it
if
literally
you're-
looks like, especially from a distance,
Yeah.
it looks like fur. It could be.
Does it? I always look at it. Always
Well,
like...
it has like leaves and stuff like that, but
Yeah,
you're
but-
talking about through dense woods, further
Yeah.
away. Like, do they say how far away like he saw this hairy man?
It was, I want to say miles and miles away from where Dennis was last seen. So it wasn't like super, super close to that
No,
spot,
I meant
but,
like from where.
Wait, didn't you say that he was also talking to like a park ranger about this shit?
Yes.
And the park ranger didn't look at this thing and go, huh, that's different. I should probably look into that and follow it.
Yeah, that was one of the criticisms, is like they didn't really follow up with this at all.
So once again, adults sucking.
Exactly. Dennis's father believes that he was taken by another person. So a lot of them think that like it could have been this like hairy man, which like they also speculate was possibly a moonshiner, like someone that was like smuggling liquor, and obviously like that would make sense that like he didn't want to be seen by anyone for that
Right.
reason. But yeah, the man was not looked into enough. And the location was downhill from where they were. And it was still, I mean, it was far, but it was a reasonable distance. If someone was in really good physical shape, they would be able to like traverse that area relatively quickly, like even while holding a small child. So some other theories are that that Dennis was attacked by a black bear, because in 1969 there was like this weird food shortage that was going on, and so bears don't normally attack humans, but given if there was a food shortage and, bear's hungry, bear wants to eat, bear's just going to go for anything. And
No, honestly, I think I would give credence to two of those theories, like that moonshiner or somebody, like maybe Dennis, like say for the moonshiner, right? Moonshiners don't want their operations being seen. They hide them deep in the woods, kind of thing. What if Dennis turned down the right path and
the wrong path?
Well, yeah,
Right.
and the wrong path, and stumbled upon why that person was there, snagged him, and was like, like I can't have you coming back, and you're a little kid. You're gonna say like, oh, I found this thing, and then the authorities are gonna come in, raid my damn shit.
But also, if you're going to snatch a child and the child was led back there, isn't that also opening up to, oh shit, the authorities would be coming back here? Like,
Yeah, but if no one else knows you're there, and think about like these people that are criminals, right? They're already thinking, hey, I can get away with what I'm doing already. This just adds another check, like, well, I can take this kid, no one's going to know about it. I'll knock him out, or I'll put duct tape or whatever over his mouth. I'll carry him off. And maybe his whole intention originally was like, I'll just knock him out and I'll just put him somewhere and the authorities will find him later, right? Because there's going to be a search. So, like, maybe the hairy man, like you said, he was in camouflage kind of thing, and he has him over his shoulder, and he decides, hey, I'm going to traverse up here, and I'm just going to put him down. Maybe he hurt the kid worse than what he thought and panicked, and then it was just like, oh, okay. Because, like, did they find him? Is that what were you saying?
well, okay, so a few years
Sorry, I'm jumping way ahead
No,
here.
you're fine. So a few years after his disappearance, like a man came forward, and this guy was also like illegally hunting, so it took him like a weird amount of time to actually come forward with this information. But he found skeletal remains over in Tremont's Big Hollow, and one of the things he found was a small skull. So a lot of people were thinking that that could possibly be Dennis, because the area was like 3.5 miles downhill from where like Dennis was last seen. And it was kind of going in that same direction of where his footprint was found. So, but there was just too much time that had passed at that point, and like animals get to that stuff. And so there was, remains probably scattered all about, but it was never made conclusive for sure that that was Dennis's remains that were found. So it's kind of sad. And also, like, I mean, I wonder too, it could have been a situation like with any of these cases with the children, is that like, they're so tiny, and they get disoriented, they get lost, and they can fall into a ravine or something, and then like just be overlooked because
Yeah.
it doesn't seem likely considering how large this search was, but
also like I think we touched on it before, a lot of some of the theories too is that they took the map of the missing 411 and they lined them up with the cave systems. Because sometimes with the cave systems, it's not necessarily like you walk in and there's this massive hole in the mountainside. Like, it can be something super, super tiny that, like, it could be, like, they could fall into something like that.
Right.
So,
yeah, but I feel like
if
if you were to fall into that, like, say there was leaves over that hole, right? And they took the wrong step and they fell in. But you have hundreds, if not thousands of people searching in what they do, like what they call like a grid-like form, bump-to-bump grid form, which basically everyone's maybe spread out, I don't know, maybe 20 feet apart from each other, and they're all walking at the exact same time, looking under everything, scouring everything. Like,
but sometimes
someone would freaking, I feel like, would find that hole.
But if they're small and say the cave system wasn't that way, what if the cave system was in like the base of a tree?
Like, I'm not saying like it's very possible.
So it could be anything. Like, that's
all right. Well, I got a doozy for you guys. All right. So we talked about we had 2 missing children. Like, right. We had 1928 foul play over here. That's what I'm sticking with.
Same.
All right. So there was a man. This is like from like one of the newer movie, Missing 411, The Hunted. You have a gentleman by the name of Thomas Messick, and he went missing at age 82. Now, a lot of people are like, okay, it's an 80-something-year-old guy. Like, of course, something happened, right? Health-wise and stuff like that. But he went hunting with, I think it was 7 other people. So you had 3 young guys, like one of it was his son and 2 other of his like son's friends or just family friends, right? And then you had 4 older guys all around his age, and they were doing basically what's like a drive hunting. So you have watchers, and then you have the guys who go around the huge radius and sort of push deer or elk towards the watchers. So the watchers, basically, that's their job. They sit down, they do not move, and they look for the deer that's coming towards them to shoot, and they hunt them. And, like, he went missing up in the town, or like the town or village or whatever, in Brant Lake, New York, near Lily Pond and Lake George Wild Forest. And he was 82nd Airborne Division, and he was a hunter for 55 years. Like
55
years?
He's
been hunting for 55 years, raised his kids around it, like all of that.
I think I vaguely remember this case.
When everyone interviewed the family and his friends and everything, they're like, what are the chances that maybe he got up off the stump that you guys said, hey, sit here and watch, be the watcher. Maybe he got up and wandered off. They're like, it wouldn't happen because, like, he knew his job was to sit there and wait for the elk or the deer to come towards him. Like, that was his job. He wasn't going to move. Like, he's an expert hunter, so he would know, like, hey, if something went wrong, like, they all had walkie-talkies, all on the same channel, always communicating with each other. If anything went wrong, he knew, okay, pick up the walkie-talkie, communicate to the rest of the people. Because he was each of the watchers were about 150 yards spread apart. And maybe even less than that. So it wasn't like everyone else was that far away from him. Like, he wasn't alone and things like that. And then another rule is, which he knew as a hunter, was like, if something's gone wrong, fire your weapon 3 times in the air. And that's a signal for, hey, we need to go and help this person. So, like, but there was nothing. And there was 300 plus people who came in and helped search for this man. FBI got involved, which FBI does not get involved for missing person cases when you're an adult. They only come in to help when you're a missing child.
Yeah, it's like 18 and younger, I'm pretty sure.
And basically when the wife talked to the FBI, she asked him, she's like, why are you guys here? Like, I've been told by like the state police as well as the forest rangers and all that, you guys don't come in with this stuff. And they're like, well, we're here to observe, and there might be some strange things happening with this case that correlate to other things, but we won't ever be able to tell you unless we find them. And that was the only time she talked to him, but that's what they told her. And FBI's been showing up weirdly for adult cases since the 1950s. Like, just sending 2 agents in to analyze, and basically if they come in and they're just there to analyze, what they're doing is taking down data and finding commonalities for analysis reports that they can get back to like their headquarters, right? So that was like a really interesting one, because like even local law enforcement is like, we had no idea why they were there. Like that's all they even told us too. They said we don't need to know, and that they're just here to observe and see how things are going. Which is like, what? Why the hell are you there then?
Were there a lot of other like cases during that time? Like,
what do you mean?
Any kind of other like missing persons that like?
So there was like one case that happened 9 days after Thomas went missing in New York, and I don't have that in front of me to give like exact pinpoint where at, but this man's name was Frederick Drum, my bad, and he literally was like 50 miles like away from where Thomas went missing. He went missing too. And he was only, I think, from what I can remember off the top of my head, I think he was only 62 years old.
Aliens.
And he told everyone where he was going and all that stuff and just vanished too.
That's
like there's no trace. And the biggest crazy thing with Thomas though is not only like the 55 years of being a hunter, one of his friends, his best friend, who was like the closest to him, said about 150 yards up, like basically up on the hill where the guys were driving people, like supposedly driving the deer forward. He heard like a strange noise that he never heard before.
Aliens.
And that was around the same time frame when Thomas went missing.
Aliens.
Because I was going to say, if there was like, maybe a lot of other cases around that same time or that same year, maybe that's why the FBI were like, okay, we need to like.
Well, that's the thing. Like,
aliens.
There's a map, which anyone who's really interested in this stuff, you should just type in missing 411, like hot map, or just you could probably just put map and go to Google Images, and you'll see like in states there's these big red circles kind of thing. And it's not just like, oh, hey, one person went missing here. There's handful of people missing in the exact same, like, I think they're all mapped out to being like anywhere from like 25 to 50 miles. Like people just missing in these radiuses. Like, and one of the theories is that if you were to look at like the military bases around that area, like the military bases are maybe 10 to 15 miles away from all these radiuses.
Aliens.
It's not aliens, my God.
Is there like a time of year where this seems to happen? Like a season? Like, is it in the winter? Is it like
it's pretty much anywhere. Like, It's pretty much at any time, but it's usually always within these specific spots. Like Crater Lake is like one of the largest areas in like that have the most known cases, and that's in California. And what Crater Lake is, it's beautiful, and then also it was formed, I don't know, like millions of years ago out of a volcano, and then water from over the, thousands and thousands of years helped fill it up to this beautiful landscape now. But there's apparently a military base near there, I guess undocumented, but it's one of the theories or conspiracy theories. It's like not Area 51, but
Area 51.
But in a way, like, in a way, it's like Area 51 kind of thing.
Don't you tell me it's not aliens when you're sitting
Why
here
would
telling us
aliens?
another...
Okay, so humor me with that theory. Like, why aliens?
Because think about it. If aliens are going to pick up on someone, like if they're going to pick somebody up, where are they going to pick them up? Oh, guess what? In the middle of the forest, where nobody else is around, where nobody else can attest that it was aliens.
I've always heard that aliens are drawn more to energy, though, so like densely populated.
But also think about there's so many different aliens out there. You know, what if it's a race of alien that is literally picking people up? What if it's a race of alien that is picking us up one by one and then doing experiments on them? Like, think about us. Whenever we find a new species of animal, we let it live its life, but we also track it, and then once it's dead, we dissect the shit out of it to see, okay, how does it work?
Okay, hold that note. Let me finish up my case, all right?
Aliens.
So, going back to Thomas here. So, like, one of the FBI showing up, that was weird. And you had, 300 plus people searching everywhere. To this day, they still have not found him. And he went missing in early November of 2015. And no one's like, okay, say an animal took him, say he got up, he had heart issues, he was basically partially deaf, and he only had one functioning eye because of gunpowder back in like I think the 80s or something exploded when he was like packing his rifle, and it took out one of his eyes basically. So like this guy is not in tip top physical shape, right? Like he could have had a heart attack on the log, but they were like, where's his body? Even if an animal came and took his body, there'd still be some sort of like tracks or something like that. And, like, they brought in canine dogs. They tracked him literally from where they started, like where they parked their cars and everything, went straight to the spot where he sat down on this, like, stump, and then they sat down because there was no more scent. There was nothing. There's no, like, say he sort of wandered off, like, had some sort of cognitive
like Alzheimer's.
issue, like Alzheimer's, delusions, something like that,
dementia.
That caused him to like get up off the stump to stumble around. But like even after searching the entire freaking like hillside and mountainscape and miles of searching, they're like, you would have found a gun, right? Because that rifle weighs maybe, I don't know, like 8-10 pounds. Like you wouldn't want to keep trekking that damn thing around if you're just sort of lost and confused.
Yeah, you would find it. They don't break down that easily.
They're like an animal isn't going to sniff a gun and be like, oh, yeah, that's food.
Yeah, let me pick that up and I'll go shoot my food.
He was older. Could it have been like a suicide type situation?
No, but where's the body?
Right, exactly.
Where's like, even if he, like, there was no one fired their weapon that day. Not until like they started trying to search for him and they were shooting out their guns for him to try to hear. Why they were yelling for him on the walkie, driving around honking their horns, like everything. Like there was not a single.
So they didn't hear anything over the walkie-talkie that indicated he was in any sort of trouble. Everyone, when they sat down and they're like halfway through the hunt, they were like, everyone checked in. He checked in. He was like, everything's still good. I'm still here. So everyone like did their normal thing, and then they pushed all the way through. They found no deer. There was nothing. And even when the forest rangers went up there and started searching, they said the odd thing is that there was like, it was almost void of life up there. They're like, which is not normal, especially around that time of the year. It's not aliens.
It's aliens!
One theory that I saw was that possibly the sound that one guy heard, he said he couldn't explain, was like a tree falling down kind of thing. He's like, you hear the roots ripping up from the ground and then the tree smacking and the cracking of that. He's like, maybe that's what he heard, and maybe a tree fell on Thomas, right? Which is a possibility, but that can be debunked because he said it wasn't like to the left of him or to the right of him. It was way up on the hilltop where the three young guys were coming to try to push deer towards them. So he's like, but I've never heard a sound like that from what I've heard before, and it's not fucking aliens.
It's aliens!
What would an alien do with a semi-deaf, semi-blind possibly like stroke victim who's 82 years old, like, and I don't mean that in any disrespect. It's just out of the fact, like,
okay, he's older, he's lived the life. They can get stories from him. They can ask him more. He's got more experience under his belt. So,
I doubt that the aliens are like any aliens are like
looking for
Yes.
experience.
Tell us about your shitty Earth experience.
Okay, think about it. If you want to get the most information out of someone, are you going to look to a child, or are you going to get to
so then
someone
why
who's been there for years?
If aliens,
Depends
then
on what
why,
kind of story
why
you're
children?
looking for.
Because think about it. You want to study the babies, you want to study midlife, you want to study full adulthood, and you want to study as they're on their way out. You know, it's a full life spectrum of them. And if they just take one child and they have to sit there and wait for the child to age and do all this shit, it'll take forever. So why not
It'd be a
pick
good
and
study, though.
choose?
Well,
Pick
I mean,
and choose.
that's one of the most ridiculous theories that I did see out there, where people are like, okay, starseeds, right? So these children or these adults now that have gone missing with the whole alien thing, right, is that years prior to all the, you know, the individuals, like, they're born, right? Well,
Yes.
the mama was actually abducted without her knowing, and they implanted starseed, their sperm basically, into her womb, and then she gives birth, and then they just watch and see what the starseed does with their life, kind of thing.
I've heard about that.
And I was like, oh god. Like that's like someone like really sipping the
yeah.
juice there.
It's possible, but also I wasn't going with that theory. I was just going with
Throw myself off a bridge now.
I was just going with, you know, the possibility that the aliens could be
possible?
abducted. No, well, yeah, it could be. You know, you don't know. There's so much.
You're
that we
right. I don't
don't
know, but like that just seems so far.
My man's probably got
Why?
hit by a tree.
Like I'm thinking that. Well, I can't even say what happened to
They came out
Thomas.
and said not long ago that aliens are real. So why is me posing the idea that it could be aliens? Why is it so far fetched? It's not like they're picking them up from like the cities. It's not like my homeboy was walking down the street in like Chicago and all of a sudden poof. Like no, he was in the forest. He was in like away from everything.
But he wasn't like one of the normal. Some of the other cases where they're out, like some of these hunters are out alone, right? This guy was like near, and it was daytime. It wasn't nighttime.
Yeah.
It was like broad daylight. And why wouldn't
Who
anyone
would've
else
thunk?
seen something in the sky or
Because
something like that?
People say that aliens have a way advanced technology, so we wouldn't be able to know.
What if it's Predator?
I mean, then we're all fucked. So either
The
way,
invisible alien coming down and hunting the hunters.
like it's a possibility.
I don't see the motive with the aliens.
Why not? They do
I don't
crop.
know.
What's the motive for crop circles?
It looks cool.
They're expressing their
New
creative.
tattoo idea.
Mother Nature
Yeah.
giving herself a tramp stamp? Like,
Hey,
what's the motive behind crop
Well, they've
circles?
also
to each their own.
debunked a lot of crop circles and shown that
Okay, well, some people, but there's
caught a lot of people doing them.
yeah, but even before that, you know, the ones that aren't debunked, the ones that have shown up, and it's like, what the hell? Like, and it's not just here; it's
Like a
all
flash
over
mob.
The place.
You know, remember how like people would get together for flash mobs? It's just like that same thing, like someone on Craigslist anonymous, like being like, crop circle, meet me here this day, and sends out, spams as many emails as possible, and people get their rope and their plywood together, and they're like, gonna do it.
So what? Your theory is that there's just all of these serial killers, just
No,
looming
I'm
in
not
groups?
saying that. Like, I'm not. I don't know what for the children. I do think there's pedophiles, serial killers doing their nasty, terrible shit.
Mm-hmm.
For some adults, I still think that too. Some of the teenagers, I think that too, right? But for like Thomas, I have no explanation. Like broad daylight, literally sitting down on his ass, and he just disappears. There's no trace. There's no him getting up, walking away. There's nothing. He just literally vanished. I would give more credence in somehow, like, on the more weird spectrum, somehow, I don't know, maybe slipped into an alternate universe, right? An alternate dimension.
Oh, we
Like, I
got
don't
an
know.
Outlander other thing. He touched a tree randomly or weirdly enough, and then poof, transported back in time or ahead in time.
Or maybe he just wanted to. Finally, maybe he like also planned in a way, like being like, hey, I'm going to go. I want to die out here in the woods. Maybe he was like, yeah, my heart's failing.
Thinking. Yeah.
I got all this stuff. His wife was, I think, at the time of his disappearance, she was 56 years old. Let me look at here. I think I have that in the article.
That's still young.
I know. His wife is very young. He was 82. Let me see. I think I have it here. Let's see. I swear I saw it in this article that I printed out.
But, okay, I'm 80-something years old. I just want to go and die off in the woods. So what you're going to do is, instead of just being like, let me die in peace, what you're going to do is you are going to sacrifice all of this man-hour, all of these search teams, put your family in such a disarray, wondering whatever happened to you. They'll never stop looking for you.
It does seem weird because he went with a group, too. It's like one thing if he went by himself, but...
Well, one theory, behind that, right, is that he killed himself. He did find a way to kill himself. Or he had a heart attack on that stump. Yeah, and because, he was having a stroke or he was having a heart attack, he couldn't call, he couldn't do anything, because during that, you're not going to be able to be like, yes, I literally can't breathe. My heart feels like it's going to explode. My blood pressure is rising to the point where I'm losing consciousness.
But the body.
Over.
But, yeah, let me shoot my gun in the air and get over the walkie-talkie. Well, the body thing is, a bear, right? Maybe a bear came and picked him up.
You're coming with me.
I mean, he was only 160 pounds and he was 5'10". He didn't weigh a lot, and a bear a big ass bear is gonna come and grab that. He'd be able to just easily pick him up, Yeah. So there's that possibility, but there was no bear tracks from what they're saying. So I have no idea what happened to him. Yeah. One thing was a tree fell over and he's under a big ass tree. But everyone who's walked those woods and been a part of that investigation said he was on it. There's no way, because even if the smallest, the largest tree in that area did fall over and hit him, and he was underneath it, part of half his body would still be sticking out. These
are the facts.
So I don't know.
Okay.
Oh yeah, what are the facts?
He was older.
Yes.
Okay, he was isolated. Okay, he disappeared. There's no body. He's got all this experience under his belt. And the big
Doc Brown came in with a DeLorean.
It's possible. No, but what I'm saying is the biggest red flag for that was the FBI was there. Mulder and Scully shows up. You're never going to sit there going, oh, yeah, this is normal. There's no weird shit going on this.
Episode that apparently sort of does correspond around missing
okay,
411.
Then. So,
we have yet to get to that episode, but...
So, again, I immediately, if the FBI shows up for something like this, I'm going, it's aliens. Because why the fuck else would it be anything but? No body, no motive,
I don't see the FBI showing up for aliens. I see military, straight military.
Do you not know who the American government is?
Yeah, I know who they are.
Okay, then.
I live in this country.
Fucking aliens. Fucking aliens.
All right.
We can talk about aliens more in another episode.
Oh, my God.
Fucking aliens.
Thanks, Amanda.
I've been waiting to say it.
Fucking aliens.
Okay, well, you have your theory.
Well,
aliens.
The other case that I kind of looked into, this kind of reminds me of, was this guy named Maurice. And this was in 1981. And he was 84 years old as well. So, older guy. And he went hunting with his friend for topaz over in Pike National Forest in Colorado. And same thing. He went missing. He was with his friend. His friend was gone maybe 15 minutes. Came back to check on him. And all his tools and stuff that he used for digging were gone. And he was gone. And same thing.
He found gold.
They couldn't.
Good jackpot. And was like, I will not share.
Him. And it reminded me of that because it's where the hell does all this stuff go?
Aliens. He slipped into a Malter.
He slipped into a Mulder?
He slipped into an alternate reality, maybe. Or maybe he fell into another plane. I don't know. I always like thinking about the magical, mystical, mysterious possibility
I
of
know.
other things. So,
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot can happen in 15 minutes, especially if you're in the fucking wilderness.
That's why I don't
shit,
go.
if you're someone who's had to take a pregnancy test, imagine all the shit you've thought about in just 3 minutes.
True that.
Like
Like,
there's that whole thing where it's like a lot of hunters, especially when they are super experienced, and even when they're younger, because there's a lot of younger hunters that have gone missing too. It's that false confidence where they don't think they need to have like their GPS on them. They're like, I've hunted these woods, since I was a kid. I know
They
them.
get
I'm like,
I know how to
Exactly.
do it. Like, I'll be
So-
fine.
Yeah.
they'll leave. They'll sometimes
Nobody
find
plans
their
for
like
aliens.
cars. They'll find their cars, like, and their GPS system will be in their car. Like, why the fuck would you not bring that?
Because nobody plans for aliens.
I like how this episode just turned into the alien episode.
Because that's where I stand on this. Nobody plans for aliens. Aliens just happen.
I need alcohol.
All right. Well, on that note.
Yeah, right.
Well, you were talking about a case in Colorado. I actually also have a case in Colorado that I did some research on. So I don't know what it is with Colorado, but
because
It's a hot spot.
yeah.
The one that I did was also in Colorado.
Yeah. I also researched the Joseph Keller case, and he actually went missing the day before his 19th birthday.
No.
Yeah. Him and a couple of his friends, they were doing like a long distance trip where they went to Vegas, they went to San Francisco, and they went to
That would
the
be our luck.
Grand
So,
Canyon.
you know what? Let's have a ladies' trip. We're going to go to Vegas. All three of us disappear and become a missing 411 case.
Yeah, because that's something I need on my plate. Thanks.
But
Become real spirit sisters.
Joseph and his friends were heading to Joe's aunt and uncle's Dude Ranch on the Rainbow Trout Ranch in Colorado, which was in the San Juan Mountains. And they went on a run, and Joe got...
That's what got him.
Right? I know.
Running.
Running.
Joe got a little bit ahead of them, again, with the being ahead.
Oh, Joe, why are you doing that?
And
Joe, slow down.
if
That's
you
it.
don't...
If we go
Slow,
hiking,
Joe.
we're handcuffing each other.
Yeah.
That's it. Guys, I've solved it. That's the one way that we can avoid becoming a missing 411 case. Handcuffs.
Well, then the aliens are going to be like, this is really fucking
Oh my
easy.
God.
This is some really weird
Amanda,
kinky
go on.
shit.
Well, and if
Shut
you,
up with the aliens.
if you stay on the trails, it's fairly flat, but when you go off, that's when it starts to get like really like hilly and mountainous. And his friend had said that he was just ahead of them, and if you get lost, it's like you gone. And if you go missing out there, it's going to be very hard to find you, because in that forest or that mountain area, there's 9 counties within that mountain area.
Wow.
So that's like a hell of a place to get lost.
This is why you handcuff yourself to your homies.
And like
Kinky.
the crazy thing is Joe was a competitive runner. So
Yeah, Joe.
Once again, slow down.
Yeah, slow down, Joe. Don't
And-
flex on.
Yeah, seriously,
Don't flex
stop
on
flexing.
Well,
everybody.
there you go. That just also supplies my alien theory, because if they see some Usain Bolt motherfucker
All
running
right,
through the
there's
woods,
only
like,
one Usain Bolt.
I'm gonna look at that guy and I want to study that one and harness that power.
Lauren, a marathon runner is like a cross country runner. It's not a sprinter.
Whatever. Still.
Jesus.
Yeah, help us
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, but there was a GPS tracker on the friend, and it showed them turning right off of Forest Road 250 onto the Ranch Drive, which is just right behind the lodge. And basically they said that if you could literally be a blind man and you could find your way through that forest, but somehow Joe went missing that close to the lodge. And
what year was this?
This was in 2015.
Oh. Shit. So
Yeah.
this is like,
Yeah.
this is literally right the same year that
5
Tom went
years ago.
missing.
Yeah. And when the friends got back to the lodge, they thought just he got lost a little bit and then he would work his way back to the lodge. But when Joe didn't show up for dinner, they drove around honking and yelling and waiting for Joe to just come limping through the forest. And there was nothing. At 7:30 that same night, a small patrol of ranch hands hiked up the rocks towards the closest formation. And by 9:30, which was 2 hours later, there was already 35 people looking for Joe. And they said even if he was hurt, he would have heard us and he would have yelled or something along those lines. And
Were there known reports for like, mountain lions, bears, things like that?
yes. Yeah, there were mountain lions, there were bears, there was
All right, got a theory.
everything.
All right, I'm gonna hit you guys with my theory. It's not aliens. Literally, because you said he was out running.
Mm-hmm.
He was running on a trail.
Mm-hmm.
He lost his footing, slipped somehow, knocked his head against a rock or a tree or something, knocked his ass out cold so he couldn't hear his friends yelling for him. He's bleeding a bit from his head.
Mm-hmm.
Wild animal, hungry, wild animal. Smells that. It was like,
a possum or something.
Yeah, a possum just ate him. A pack of raccoons came and ate him, No, like, honestly, it's probably, like, that would be my guess, is that he was running, he lost his footing, knocked his head, he was bleeding, a bear, mountain lion, cougar, something came, was like dinner. So,
Okay, but was there anything found left of him?
Yeah, they found him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
He was dead, but they found him. And I will get to that, but
See, you jumped the gun, Austin.
Can I say sleuth?
Yeah, they were searching for
Detective Pikachu.
God, I don't even know how long.
Dick Tracy.
Amanda's still trying to talk.
But yeah, they searched and they did not stop searching. Like, they did a little bit in the winter because there was nothing that they could do in the winter to look for him because it was covered in snow. And they didn't find him until July 6th of the next year. And they themselves, like the parents and like the forest preserve or whatever, police or whatever they're called, didn't find him. A rescue hobbyist and endurance runner who was also a former offensive lineman of the Pittsburgh Steelers discovered the body.
Oh, damn.
In a boulder field below the cliff band, which they said that cliff band area you cannot get to at all. Like, so they have no idea how he ended up there. A lot of people are saying it's foul play, like that he was killed, but like there's still the original cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, but there are still people saying that it's foul play because he wouldn't have just fallen.
Did he have any active enemies?
It does not say. Because he was with friends, so there's
But keep your friends close, your enemies closer.
There's also that too, but
there could have been a snake in the grass.
Yeah. The death is still a mystery to some people. Like, even though they found him and they have that preliminary cause of death.
Well, okay, that totally blows a hole in my alien theory for this one.
You're welcome, Austin.
I admitted it. I admitted it.
I thought for sure you're going to be like, what if an alien bopped him too hard in the head?
Yeah, what if he pissed off an alien?
Oh my god.
No, I admit that this one is definitely not an alien
Did they
story.
say, like, when they found him, was his clothes still intact?
Yes,
was he
everything
partially
was
eaten?
everything was still intact.
Okay.
Everything. And it had been a year.
And
Is
did
it
they
could have
find
been
him in a
something
spot
that
that
he-
they already searched over and over again? Or?
So,
Well, you said, you said he was found in a spot that was
Well, if it was blunt force trauma to the head, was it could that also be like him falling and nailing his head on something?
it's a
That's
possibility,
what I was stating
yes.
earlier.
So he could have been just on the trail, slipped, fell, and then bam.
Yeah.
It's like I have an echo.
Well, and
I tuned you out the moment you put a hole in my alien stuff. So
yeah, and they had like dog teams and all of them like looking for him. And when they did find him, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, when they came to retrieve the remains, they had all these horses and they couldn't get the horses to where he was. So they had to get as far as they could and then they had to traverse to get to him themselves. Like, that's how hard it was for you to get in there.
Huh.
So, yeah, it's
How far away did they find him from where he was last
I
seen?
believe 1.7 miles.
Oh,
from
wow.
where
Okay,
he went
yeah,
missing.
that's not that far.
So,
he could have like spur of the moment was like, hey, it's not that far. Like, and if you're a sprinter, like, or a runner or whatever, I don't know. Lauren doesn't run. Maybe he just got overzealous and was like, hey, I want to try something different. Like, this seems cool.
yeah.
Like,
Well,
so-
and that's where the friend said that he doesn't think that's what happened because he said that Joe wasn't that kind of person.
Joe's never been spontaneous in his life. That's like saying no one in their goddamn life has ever been spontaneous or had a thought of being like, you know what, I'm gonna go try something new.
Yeah.
so it's
Joe
like,
likes what he likes, man.
Likes running.
Yeah. Well, and they also said that the father and the what are they called? The people who forest preserve, like the police people that
forest rangers.
Yes, that. Apparently they had like a lot of
The forest police.
I don't know what to call them.
Bad boys, what you gonna do when you don't put out that
Smokey
fire
the bear
at the
and his
campsite?
bitches.
Well, yeah, and I guess
I'm sorry,
the
that was really
dad and the ranger, I had to think about it again for a second. They were butting heads, and like there was literally one ranger that was on duty at this like mountainous preserve area that they were at, and like he wasn't really giving them anything. So the dad, like, some people are saying, I mean, not the dad himself, but like some people are saying that the ranger had something to do with it, because the ranger, like, immediately after this happened, decided that he didn't want to be a ranger anymore, that he wanted to like go work for like state senators and stuff like that.
I mean, that's kind of fair though. Like,
Yeah.
something like that happens, and like he was the only one that was like
Yeah.
patrolling that area. You have that guilt there.
Yeah. So it's,
Well, they are super under like
Staff.
staffed and stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, you think about like you might have a handful of them, and their whole thing is like, oh, you need to manage and protect thousands and thousands of fucking acres.
Also,
you know?
like, it's, you even said at the beginning of the podcast that many of the forestry and stuff, they don't want to give up these cases, or they're not as willing to give information about some of these cases. So, because that, like, right off the bat, you know, like, the one ranger who was with the family and they saw this hairy man carrying a red thing, you know, the ranger never went and further investigated it, you know, so that is something that reflects negatively on them. You know, this happens, and nobody thinks to check a boulder field or a boulder, whatever it is.
Right.
So, again, that's like negligence on them.
Mm-hmm.
So, if they think that it's going to negatively reflect on their departments and their whatever, you know, I can see why they'd be like, yeah, no, we don't want to show you that.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's like, get good or get fucked. Like,
Yeah. Well, and another thing that I read was in 2016, now this was the same year that they found Joe, only 14% of several hundred reportable incidences were entered into any system.
Well, yeah, they have no database.
Yeah.
Which they said, like, so when David reached out to them and was like, hey, I want to get a list of all, like, the national parks, like, missing cases, right? Missing people cases. They said that doesn't exist. And he's like, what do you mean it doesn't exist? And they're like, well, we don't have a system like that. And he's like, well, okay, well, I'll take any files that you guys do have. And they're like, well, why? And he's like, well, I'm doing research on all this, and I'm gonna, I'm asking, with the Freedom of Information Act, right? And they're like, okay, well, we'll get back to you, right? So they call him back maybe a month later, and like a lawyer calls him back this time, not someone from who actually works, like who we called with the agency to work, like an actual lawyer. And they're just like, wait, who are you again? And why are you looking in this? And he's like, well, I'm doing research for a book and all of that. And they're like, well, we don't have to give that to you. And he's like, okay, well, Freedom of Information Act says otherwise. And also and they're like, well, we're going to have to charge you to do that because it's going to take hours to do. And he's like, well, how much? And they're like, well, to do that, the first price was $300,000. And he's like, well, I'm an author, so not only I get an exempt from that, so I don't have to pay anything, which is an actual actual thing. And I'm also saying the Freedom of Information Act, so I am requesting those. And they're like, okay, we'll get back to you. Well, another month goes by. They contact him again, and they're like, we're not giving it to you. It would, for us to be able to even make a database like that and put it all together, it would cost us $1.4 million to have a database like that. And they're just like, so yeah, best of luck kind of thing, and then hang up. And that's it. And any person who tries to look into this, even one case file, not even looking for every single one, right? They'll go and they'll just be like, we get stopped. We're just told it doesn't exist, or we can't give it to you, or we're just not going to give it to you. And that's it. They don't return any more of our phone calls. They don't answer any more of our emails. And it's just what do they have to hide? And why haven't they made a database for this?
Well, apparently they did. They tried. There was a incident management analysis and reporting system that was a $50 million database to nowhere, which means it did not work. So they scrapped it. But
wait,
why
they spent $15 million?
50.
Oh, $50 million to make a fucking computer database?
That didn't work.
Dude, hire an intern with a freaking website design degree and hire another one who can do coding.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they could do it, and you'd just be like, hey, we'll both give you $50,000 in a year to do this.
Yeah.
And they'll probably be like, all right, just supply us with Red Bull and Mountain Dew and stuff like that, and they'll get it done.
Yeah. And, why? Why didn't you try to do this again? Why didn't you,
Because The FBI.
Okay, let's set the record first.
Don't want anybody to know that they're in cahoots with the aliens.
Okay, I'm going to say this. I do believe in aliens.
Same.
But I don't fucking believe they're coming down and being like, hey, you 84, 82-year-old men, come take a space journey with us.
Military, didn't you not say that? He was in the
82nd Airborne Division?
Infantry? No, that's not the right word.
No.
Stop trying. You're going to insult a lot of veterans.
It's
also,
so
happy Veterans Day.
Yes, happy Veterans Day, everyone.
When this airs, yes. But he's got knowledge. He's got knowledge of, like, military stuff and how they do things, you know? It's possible. Like,
it's just
why of all throughout his entire life would there not be any other strange kind of things around him?
You don't know that there wasn't.
Well, his family and everything, everyone who knew him said he was a super down-to-earth, like, good guy, loving husband, great father. He just liked hunting, and he liked just being to himself.
You're down-to-earth, and you've had shit happen to you that you can't explain.
Yeah, but I don't have the FBI knocking on my door.
Okay, but you're also...
But I go sit on a stump, and I get whooshed off, and they're going to come and...
But you never know. That's the thing. You never know.
We've had Austin on our radar forever. Now that he's disappeared.
After this episode airs, we're going to be on the FBI.
Oh, God, no.
Come at me.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
But
I find it so hard to believe that, like, they haven't tried again with this database because there are...
Because they don't want you to.
Lauren. There is roughly 640 million acres of federal land. That includes national parks, national forests, and Bureau of Land Management property. That they're not reporting anything happening. I know, aliens, shut up. But, like...
Damn, I got the other two spirit sisters even, like, giving you the stink look.